My wife cheated and tricked me into raising another man's child, so I found proof, confronted her, and left her to live with the shame forever. I honestly don't know how to even begin to explain this nightmare, but I'll give it my best shot. The name's Charles and I've been married to my wife Rebecca for 6 years now. We met back at Ohio State and man, when you meet someone and it's like every star in the universe just aligns perfectly, that was us. We did all the typical college sweetheart stuff. Moved in together during senior year, survived finals week without strangling each other, and somehow managed to graduate with our sanity intact. By the time we walked across that stage in our caps and gowns, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with this woman. We tied the knot that fall in a small ceremony in Columbus, nothing fancy, just our families and closest friends. Those first couple of years were absolutely magical. We traveled whenever we could scrape together enough vacation days. Nashville, Denver, even splurged on a trip to California. We were learning how to navigate our careers, figuring out this whole adulting thing together, and honestly, life felt pretty damn good. But then we started getting serious about starting a family, and everything shifted into a more mature gear. We had those deep, meaningful conversations about kids, about the future we wanted to build, about what kind of parents we hoped to become. Rebecca went off her birth control pills, and let me tell you, when her libido skyrocketed after that, it was like I'd married a completely different woman. We grew closer than we'd ever been. Both of us were genuinely excited about taking that next monumental step together. Here's where things get complicated though. Starting a family turned out to be way harder than either of us expected. Month after agonizing month, year after disappointing year, absolutely nothing happened. Every time Rebecca's period was even a day late, we'd get our hopes up sky high, and then reality would come crashing down like a ton of bricks. It was emotionally devastating, honestly. We tried our best not to let the stress consume us, telling ourselves it would happen when the time was right, when it was meant to be. But deep down, we were both struggling with the constant disappointment. After 3 long, grueling years of trying, we finally got that positive pregnancy test, and I swear I thought my heart was going to explode with joy. Everything we'd been through, all the heartache and waiting, suddenly felt worth it. We were finally going to be parents. When our daughter Lily was born, holding her in my arms for the first time was like experiencing pure magic. I was all in from day one, middle of the night feedings, diaper changes, reading bedtime stories, the whole 9 yards. I didn't mind any of it because this was our little family, and I felt like I was finally doing something meaningful with my life. Rebecca was an incredible mother too. Life felt complete in a way I'd never experienced before, and all those little disagreements we used to have just melted away like they'd never mattered in the first place. After Lily arrived, Rebecca decided to go back on birth control, but this time around her body reacted completely differently. She struggled with severe side effects. Constant nausea that lasted all day, dramatic mood swings that came out of nowhere, headaches that knocked her flat. Her doctor kept switching her prescriptions, trying different brands and formulations, but nothing seemed to work properly. Eventually, we both agreed it wasn't worth putting her through that torture anymore. We were still on the fence about having another child anyway, so I volunteered to get a vasectomy. It seemed like the logical, practical solution. Plus, the doctor assured me it could be reversed if we ever changed our minds down the road. So I went ahead and had the procedure done. 3 years later, we'd been living our lives completely stress-free when it came to family planning. And if I'm being totally honest, things actually improved significantly in the intimacy department. There was this incredible sense of freedom, you know? We didn't have to worry about anything, so we could just enjoy each other completely. Then, a few weeks ago, something felt off. Rebecca started acting differently, distant, distracted, like her mind was somewhere else entirely. I noticed she was late, which wasn't particularly unusual for her, so I didn't think much of it initially. But then I started picking up on other signs that made my stomach twist into knots. Her chest was tender and sore, and she was getting these waves of morning nausea that reminded me of when she was pregnant with Lily. I felt this weird, anxious pit forming in my stomach. Logically, I knew I'd had a vasectomy, so there was absolutely no way she could be pregnant. But still, all the classic signs were there, clear as daylight. I decided to check things out on my end just to put my mind at ease. I went to my doctor to get my sperm count tested, and I didn't mention anything to Rebecca because I was trying to avoid causing unnecessary stress if this turned out to be some kind of hormonal fluctuation or medical issue. After a couple of nerve-wracking days, I got the results back. My doctor looked me straight in the eye and told me in no uncertain terms that I was still completely sterile. My vasectomy had done exactly what it was supposed to do. In that moment, I felt like someone had sucker punched me right in the gut. I just stood there in his office trying to process what those results actually meant. I didn't want to jump to any conclusions, but my mind started racing in directions I never wanted it to go. I tried telling myself this had to be some kind of strange coincidence, that there had to be a logical explanation. But I couldn't shake this gut feeling that something was seriously wrong. So I did something I never in a million years thought I'd have to do. I took Lily to get a DNA test. That decision absolutely tore me apart inside. What kind of father questions whether his own child is actually? But I had to know the truth no matter how much it destroyed me. Let me tell you, waiting for those results was some of the longest, most agonizing days of my entire life. Every time I looked at Lily, my heart broke a little more. I kept thinking, what kind of man am I if I even have to do this to my own daughter? When the DNA results finally arrived, I was completely alone in the house. My hands were shaking as I tore open that envelope and read the words that would change everything I thought I knew about my life. Lily wasn't biologically mine. I honestly can't even begin to describe the feeling that washed over me. It was like the entire foundation of my world had crumbled beneath my feet. All those precious memories, watching her take her first steps, teaching her to say Dada, those quiet moments when she'd fall asleep on my chest, everything felt shattered into a million pieces. I didn't know how to react. Part of me wanted to scream at the top of my lungs, to cry until I had no tears left, to throw something across the room. But instead, I just sat there completely numb, feeling like I was watching someone else's life fall apart in slow motion. When Rebecca came home that evening, I didn't waste a single second. I showed her the test results, the undeniable proof of what she'd done. She went pale as a ghost, and for a moment I thought she might try to deny everything, but she didn't. She just stared at me like a deer caught in headlights. I asked her point blank if she'd been with someone else. She stammered and stuttered at first, but eventually she admitted that yes, she had been unfaithful. She swore it was only one time, that it was a terrible mistake, that she never meant to hurt me. I listened to her words, but it felt like they were just bouncing off me. I couldn't even process what she was saying. My entire life had just been turned upside down, and here she was telling me it was all just one big mistake. She tried desperately to explain herself, to apologize, saying she'd been under tremendous stress, that she was sorry, that she never wanted things to go this far. But all I could think about was how she could do this to us, to our family. I asked if there was anything else she needed to tell me, if there were any other secrets she was hiding. She kept insisting it was just that one time, that she'd never done anything like this before in her life, but I didn't know if I could believe a single word coming out of her mouth. She begged me to forgive her, said she'd do absolutely anything to fix this mess, even offered to terminate the pregnancy if that's what I wanted. I just sat there feeling like a complete stranger in my own life. That night, I ended up sleeping on the couch, staring at the ceiling until dawn, trying to make sense of everything. I didn't know what to do or where to go from here. Everything I thought I knew about my life, about Rebecca, about our marriage was completely gone. Here I was, just a few days after learning the worst news of my entire existence, and I was still completely lost. I didn't know what to say to anyone, and even worse, I didn't know what to say to my wife. We'd barely spoken since that awful night. What was I supposed to say to the woman who'd been lying to my face for God knows how long? The next few days passed in a complete haze. I felt like I was just going through the motions of living without actually being alive. I was trying desperately not to fall apart in front of Lily, who had no idea that her entire world was about to be turned upside down. That's when I got a text from an old college buddy of ours, Jake. He was one of those guys who'd been part of our friend group back at Ohio State, close enough to know us well but not close enough to be involved in our personal business. Jake's message said he'd heard from someone about our situation. I didn't even know what to make of that. I asked him what he meant and he replied, "I heard about the pregnancy thing. You doing okay, man?" My stomach dropped like a stone. I'd thought this whole nightmare was something private between Rebecca and me, but apparently other people already knew about it. I asked Jake how he'd found out, and he told me he'd overheard a couple of people from our old college group talking about it. And who was the one spreading our business around town? None other than Rebecca's best friend, Angela. Angela and my wife have been practically joined at the hip since college. When I say inseparable, I mean they talk every single day, know every intimate detail about each other's lives, and act more like sisters than friends. Turns out Angela knew about our situation and apparently felt the need to gossip about our private family crisis. I'm not usually the type to care what people say about me, but this hit differently. Here I was, trying to process the biggest betrayal of my life, and my wife's best friend was out there running her mouth about it to anyone who'd listen. The fact that Angela knew meant Rebecca had told her, which raised a whole new set of questions. What exactly had she told Angela? How much of this story did Angela know? Did she know before I did? I confronted Rebecca about it that same evening. I tried to keep my cool, even though every fiber of my being wanted to start yelling. I asked her directly, "Did you tell Angela about everything that's going on between us?" At first, she hesitated, looking away like she didn't want to answer. She gave me this pathetic excuse that she needed someone to talk to, that she felt so guilty and confused, and Angela was the only person who would understand. She apologized, but it felt completely hollow. "You couldn't just keep this between us?" I asked, barely able to contain my frustration. "Do you understand how humiliating it is to have other people know about this, about what you did?" She tried to assure me that Angela didn't mean any harm, that she probably only mentioned it because she was concerned. But that didn't change the fact that this was our private life, and she'd chosen to share it with someone who obviously had no concept of privacy or respect for boundaries. What really got to me was wondering how much more Angela knew than I did. I asked Rebecca directly, "Did you tell Angela about what really happened when I got pregnant with Lily?" Rebecca's face turned white as a sheet. She stammered for a moment, obviously caught completely off guard. Then she said, "No, she doesn't know about that. I didn't tell anyone." But the hesitation in her voice wasn't convincing at all. My mind was spinning with possibilities. What if Angela knew more than I did? What if Rebecca had been lying to her too, or worse, telling her the complete truth while feeding me some sanitized version of events? The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I told Rebecca that from now on, I didn't want Angela involved in our business. I was done with her getting updates on our life and judging me through the lens of her best friend's twisted version of events. I told her flat out, "If you want any chance of fixing this, keep Angela out of it. This is between you and me, not the entire world." She nodded, seeming to take me seriously for once. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the damage was already done. Now, even if I wanted to get past this, there was a whole group of people out there who knew way more than they should about my personal life. This revelation broke down another piece of that wall I'd built to hold back all my anger. Rebecca's betrayal was devastating enough, but realizing that my life had become some kind of twisted soap opera for others to discuss and dissect was on another level entirely. When I got home from work the next evening, I felt this overwhelming need to find out what Rebecca had really been telling Angela. I knew going through her phone was wrong, that invasion of privacy wasn't the solution, but my patience was completely gone, and I couldn't keep sitting in the dark. Rebecca had left her phone on the kitchen counter while she was upstairs putting Lily to bed, so I took my chance. I knew I didn't have long before she'd come back downstairs. I unlocked her phone, my heart pounding like crazy. I'm not naturally a snooper, but this situation had flipped my entire world upside down. I started with her text messages with Angela, half hoping I wouldn't find anything, half expecting to see all my worst fears confirmed in black and white. I scrolled through their conversations, trying not to read more into things than necessary. Some of it was typical stuff, funny memes, random chats about work and daily life. But then I hit a series of messages from a couple weeks back, right around the time Rebecca had started acting strange. It was like getting slapped in the face. Angela had messaged her saying, "Did you tell him yet? He deserves to know the truth." And Rebecca's response made my blood run cold, "I don't know how to. It would completely destroy him." I stopped reading for a second, trying to keep my head from spinning completely out of control. There was this sick feeling in my stomach, a dread I couldn't shake. It confirmed what I'd suspected all along. There was something more, and she'd been deliberately hiding it from me. The messages continued with Angela basically urging her to come clean while Rebecca kept saying it wasn't the right time, that she wasn't ready. It was like watching her dance around the truth, just playing for time. Then I saw one message that nearly made my heart stop completely. Angela had texted, "If he knew about everything, do you think he'd ever forgive you?" Everything. That single word kept bouncing around in my head like a pinball. What did she mean by everything? The next day, I decided to reach out to Angela directly. I know it sounds crazy, but she seemed to be the only person who knew the complete story, or at least more than I did. If Rebecca was too scared or unwilling to tell me the truth, maybe Angela could fill in the missing pieces. I sent her a simple message saying I needed to talk about some things she might be aware of. I didn't even have to explain more than that. She agreed to meet up immediately. When we met at a coffee shop in downtown Columbus, Angela looked like she'd seen a ghost. She could barely make eye contact, like she knew that I knew more than I was letting on. I didn't waste any time with small talk. I asked her straight up, "What did my wife tell you? I know she's been hiding things from me, and you know exactly what I'm talking about." At first, she hesitated, mumbling something about not wanting to get in the middle of things, about respecting privacy. But I wasn't having any of it. I told her she'd already crossed that line the moment she started discussing my marriage with other people. Her face turned red, and I could tell she was struggling to decide what to say. Then she finally cracked. "Look," she said, taking a deep breath. She told me way more than she probably should have. She admitted that Rebecca had confided in her about issues she'd been having, about doubts and regrets that apparently went back years. And it wasn't just one incident like Rebecca had claimed. According to Angela, there had been multiple times Rebecca had thought about confessing everything, but was too terrified to face the consequences. The more Angela talked, the angrier I became. My wife had been hiding so much from me, not just this one mistake, but years of deception and lies. Angela kept trying to justify her friend's actions, saying Rebecca was scared and confused, but all I heard was that my wife had been fundamentally dishonest for far longer than I'd ever realized. Angela said something that really stuck with me. She mentioned that Rebecca had felt trapped, at times, that she didn't want to hurt me, but felt like she was living two completely different lives. I didn't know whether to be furious or heartbroken. Here was the person I'd built my entire life around, who I trusted more than anyone in the world, admitting to her friend that she wasn't even happy with the life we'd created together. As I walked away from that meeting, I knew there was absolutely no going back. Whatever sanitized version of the truth she'd planned to feed me wasn't going to be enough anymore. I needed her to look me directly in the eye and tell me everything, every last detail. And if she refused, well, I'd have my answer right there. When I got home, Rebecca was waiting for me. She must have sensed something was up because she immediately asked if we could talk. I looked at her, all the anger and hurt bubbling up inside me, but I held it back. I told her, "Fine, let's talk. But this time, I don't want half-truths and I don't want excuses. I want everything, and I mean absolutely everything." She looked terrified, but I wasn't about to let her off the hook. I sat down across from her, not even sure where to begin. Part of me wanted to scream and demand answers immediately, but I knew that wouldn't get me anywhere productive. Instead, I just stared at her, waiting for her to start talking. She shifted nervously, her hands twisting in her lap, and finally whispered, "I don't even know where to begin. I wasn't in the mood for games." "Then start with what you've been hiding. No sugarcoating, no holding back. I'm completely done with half-truths." She looked down, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. "I didn't plan for any of this to happen," she mumbled. "It just got out of hand." "Got out of hand?" I repeated, my voice barely containing the rage building inside me. "Out of hand doesn't cover years of lies and months of hiding things from me. I deserve better than out of hand. I want details." After a long, tense pause, she finally took a deep breath and started talking. "It started with just messages, small things," she began, her voice shaking. "At first it was nothing serious. I was lonely, stressed, dealing with a lot, and he listened. I could feel my fists clenching, but I stayed quiet, letting her continue. I wasn't there to listen to her justify anything, I was there to hear the complete truth." She went on, "And then it became something I couldn't control. I never meant for it to go where it did, but I don't know. I was confused and I couldn't just stop. I thought I could handle it, keep it separate. But then everything got complicated." Her words sounded like static in my head. There was this bitterness in her voice, like she was upset that she'd lost control of her own situation. But for me, all I could hear was betrayal after betrayal after betrayal. I interrupted her. "Did you ever think to tell me? Did it cross your mind that maybe, just maybe, I had the right to know what was happening in my own marriage?" She finally looked up at me, eyes filled with tears. "I was scared, okay? I knew you'd leave me if you found out. And I didn't want to lose everything we'd built together. So instead you just lied for years? How do you even justify that to yourself?" I couldn't stop the frustration from boiling over. "I gave you everything I had, and you were off living some double life." Her tears fell faster, but it didn't soften my heart even a little bit. We sat in silence for several moments, the weight of everything hanging thick in the air between us. Then, almost instinctively, I asked the question that had been eating me alive. "So what's the truth about Lily?" Her face turned completely white. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "You know exactly what I mean," I replied, feeling the anger flare up again. "I got the DNA results. I know she isn't mine biologically, so why lie about that too? You couldn't even be honest about our child." Her eyes widened and she let out a shaky breath. I didn't think you'd find out, and I was hoping, I don't know, that it wouldn't matter, that you'd love her regardless." It was like another punch to the gut. "It's not that I don't love her," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "But I built my entire life around a lie. You let me believe she was mine. You watched me bond with her, raise her, and never once thought I deserved to know the truth. After everything was laid bare, I made the decision I knew I had to make. I told her I needed space, that I couldn't just move on like nothing had happened. I packed my things, left the house, and stayed with my brother Jake for a while. She cried when I left, but I didn't look back. I couldn't. Walking away felt like the only way I'd ever be able to find myself again, to build a future that wasn't built on lies and deception. As for Lily, I don't know what the future holds. I love her, and that will never change. But I need to figure out what kind of relationship we'll have moving forward, one based on truth, not on lies. All I know is that after everything I've been through, I deserve honesty. I deserve respect. And maybe someday I'll find someone who values those things as much as I do.